So this code review was hosted on my Discord server, so make sure to join it. So the first one is a script for a button, and I can already see a lot of stuff that can be improved. And since it's a screenshot, I'm going to have to write some stuff down. And let me start off by separating the first 10 lines into, well, services, and then different variables. And you also have the game workspace in there. And basically how you have it set up right now is very hard to read. And having stuff sorted like this is just going to be better, because imagine you want to change a element in the workspace, which would require you to change a variable in the script, and then you would have to look for the variable between every line of code. So it's better if you just separate them like this. Later on you can have some workspace stuff like the set. So the set would be workspace, and then you would need to use wait for child instead of the dot notation, because the script may run between the object is loaded. I just noticed that this is not actually set but stand up. And you wait for the stand-up sit set child right here. And then from that you can also get the server one, which is the sit down set. So since this is a stand-up set, this variable can just be named sit down set, which would be equal to server storage, and then again wait for child, game sets, and then you can follow it by the dot notation that sit down, like so, which is a button, then click detector, which again you have to use wait for child in here, and then a background, which can be done by button parent. And sometimes there is a case where, again, stuff doesn't load, so you have to use wait for child in here again. And then there is something just repeating from the set folder, which also uses the background parent. So instead of having it like this, you can swap these lines and have the background go from the set folder instead of just going through button parent again. And then you have a variable which can be just right at the bottom. So this is just much more readable, where you have your services at the top, different containers, and then the stuff that's inside of these containers. And then you can also set the background that parent would be equal to the stand-up set right here. And this is just an improvement for code readability, because something like this is much easier to read than the stuff right here on the right. But then you also have the function, which is set to click detector that mouse click connect function, and then you have an if statement that checks if the isInFolder variable is true. And then as you can see, you are changing the isInFolder variable into places in one if statement, but you don't really need to do that. You can just set the isInFolder equal to not isInFolder, so after the function runs, it's going to reverse its state. It's going to change from true to false and vice versa. And same with the set folder, where you change the attribute to background toggle, and then here you can change it to the current state of isInFolder before you switch it. Because the variable is set to true, so it's going to be the first if statement, and you set the folder attribute to true in that place also, and because of that it's basically going to follow the state of isInFolder. Then you have another if statement in the else, which you don't even need to check, because you are already checking this variable right here, which is if true then, and then inside of the else it's already going to check this condition, that if it's false or nil, it's going to proceed into that scope anyways. So in this if statement you will just change the background to the sit down set, and else it will just be on the stand up set. Oh, and I can also, as a final touch, just move this line right here so it's a bit more readable, and the script structure is just more consistent like this. So that's the advice for improving your script. It's better to just have everything organized like this, where you have things separated into the services, then variables, containers and stuff, and then functions at the bottom. And also how you can improve your script logic in the function to basically do the same thing but take half the amount of lines, because you don't want to have repeating functions or lines in your code. So remember that there is always a better way to do something. But moving on to another script, how I used to do twins and how I do twins now. So, and a total of 3 lines deducted per twin. So I kind of see issues with both of these. Here I can see that you have this separated, which is good, but you don't want to have the twin info where you have your services. You might want to have it in another line. And if this info is only used in one twin function on one twin create, it's better to put it inside of the function so it gets garbage collected later. So you have twin info, then you have your goals. First you need to separate this, and then you don't need to set goal position like this by doing a dot. You already improved it by moving the property table right here into the twin create, but if you wanted to twin two different things, instead of doing goal1.position, you could just move it right here, and then instead of having another goal variable, you can just add a comma right here, make it goal2 is equal to, then add a comma after the first value. It's going to be equal to the same position, or not position, the same property table as this goal from this line. So you could have two goals right here. Then you basically just create and play these two twins but for multiple twins, I recommend just having a table where you could just local twin table, and instead of having these two variables right here, you could do table.insert into the twin table, and then the created twin like this. Then you won't need this, and now this allows you to do a for loop, which would be for index twin in pairs twin table do, where you could just do twin and play. Then in the other part, like something like this is alright, but if you had more twins and multiple twins, it would be better to have a property table outside of this create, and this would be property 2, where you just set the property 1 here and property 2 there. And this is something that you don't have to do this, but from my experience, if I had multiple twins and I wanted to twin not only the position but also, let's say, the transparency, it would be better to just insert the transparency here like this instead of the table, which usually would be at the top of the script or the function that would play the twin, instead of just having to go into here and then having to write just transparency, which would be equal to 0 there. You can do it like this or just format the text like so, and yeah, that's basically it. Like I said, it would be fine for one twin, but if this function had 500 different effects, it would be just harder to do anything there. And another script, which is a behavior tree script. So the btrace had a delay because it would check if the enemy can see the player first, then move on to this task, and that's why I removed 2 waypoints, because it will make the NPC move backwards. So firstly, this might be a problem with how you structure your behavior tree, and there is also an additional check, and yeah. So from the first look at the tree, I can really see what it is. It would be better if you named your tree enemy tree state, because I can see that you changed the states right here from the sequence node, where you have the sequence root. So this sequence root could be also named to something like decide action, and then from the decide action, it would just go to this sequence, which could be changed to like C player. So you recast to the player, and I'm guessing if there is a result, it returns a success, and then you chase the player. And on the patrol, you get the waypoints, move to, and idle. So I'm guessing that the chase player and move to, that both of these nodes have their own pathfinding scripts, which you could combine into one node, that if the NPC sees the player, it could change the, let's say, set settings inside of the blackboard, and this move to would be another node that would go out of the selector, and this one would be the move to target, where the target would be a waypoint or the player if the player was seen. But that also requires changing the whole tree structure. So inside of this task start, you reset everything. You can also do this while setting up the NPC, like I did in the behavior tree video, inside of the place where you declare the blackboard. Because if you wanted to change any of these variables, you would have to search for the node, and just having this inside of a setup script would be easier. Then you have the humanoid root part, which is inside of the humanoid. I believe this is from the rig problem you had. And then the target. So first it checks if the target is there, then you do these checks right here, and also for readability, adding a return right here is something that you could consider. Then you check if the player escaped, and then you check if the path needs to be recomputed, which I can't really read right now. I don't feel like this should be here. So firstly you check if it's chasing, then if it has a path. Both of these things can be done by the Blackboard query node. If I go to the plugins and create a tree, and then just add a Blackboard query with the key being is chasing and the value being false. Same with the last player position. So if chasing is a boolean, then the current path would be the set value to check if it exists, and the last player position would be a set value also. So instead of having these checks right here, you can just use a Blackboard query like so. And the should compute path could also be done in a different task instead of the movement script. And the path would be something like object.path if you made a value like this. You can also just put it inside of the Blackboard, and then whenever you wanted to destroy the path, you would just set the object.path to nil. You would also just do object path destroy, and then move the nil like this, so it doesn't create any memory leaks. Then you get the last player position, and then check for the path status. Then you loop through the waypoints, and these 2 waypoints might also be a thing with the pathfinding, where I need to demonstrate that on a part. So if this was the NPC, right, and this was the target, sometimes the pathfinding, instead of going straight for the target, this is going to be our point, instead of it going like this for the target, it sometimes just does a circle like this, and then goes to the target. And this is an issue with pathfinding service, where the NPC doesn't create a path properly, and it's usually because of the agent settings, because these values right here might cause the NPC to think that it doesn't have space to basically just go to the target in a straight line, because it might be around in a closed area. So usually, to check if that even happens, you need to go to File, then Studio Settings, and then just search for Visualization to enable the navigation mesh. Then here we are using the dot notation to if the NPC can see the target. Okay, and this is while during editing. There is a thing I noted with the dot method on the vector 3, is that you fire it from the direction to the waypoint to the direction of the target. And I just wrote this really quickly. We have the direction to the target waypoint, and then you have the look vector that's for later, and you have the dot product from basically the same thing. And this is the NPC, this is the waypoint, and this is the target. I need to show you that this doesn't work correctly. It's printing out true constantly, saying that it's facing the target, and meanwhile the dot value doesn't really change even if I rotate the NPC. So something like this isn't particularly correct. And to fix this, instead of having the direction to waypoint, you could comment it out, and you need to fire the dot product from the direction to target into the look vector of the NPC. So right now you can see that it's not looking at the target right here, but if I rotate it, right now it's working on a 180 degree because I was checking if it's more than 0. So even if I move it right there and rotate it by 90 degrees, it's gonna be true. But if I add one more, it's gonna be false. And this checks if it's looking at the target, but if you want to check if it's looking at the waypoint, you can just do the direction to waypoint instead of the target right there. And now it's gonna be looking at the waypoint instead. So yeah, that's just a thing I missed and wanted to record it really quickly. And yeah, that's everything for this part. And then you set the NPC to be chasing. And I'm guessing this is a visualizer. For the waypoint parts, you don't really need that if you enable the navigation mesh. And then you move the humanoid to the next waypoint, where the move tool should just be a loop that loops from the next waypoints. And you set the current path variable in the blackboard to be updated waypoints, which can be kind of confusing, since it should be named to current waypoints and not current path. Like this, so you'd have current waypoints and then the current waypoint index. And you basically could just change this whole thing, instead of just having if next waypoint, then if reach, to be like a basic pathfinding function like I'm gonna show on the screen, that just loops from the waypoints and just moves to another waypoint after the move to from the previous one finishes. And you also don't need to have, let's say, this fail right here, because if you remove it, you can just have a return fail right at the bottom. Same with this one right here, because if, let's say, there isn't a next waypoint, this scope isn't going to run, and it's just going to return to the fail state right here. Oh my god, can I just get like shorter scripts, bro? So a game loop for a round-based MM game, and it's cycling through sequences. The comments are for your... Yeah, I don't usually just read the comments anyway, but let's see the sequence functions. Like right here, everything is sorted, so that's good. So you have the start voting, cancel voting, then voting complete, just a lot of breaks. What you can also do, instead of having comments like this, you can just tap them out. Then you have the cancel, complete. Yeah, from a first glance, this looks alright. So let's move to the sequencer. Oh wow, we also have the documentation here, that's nice. But well, I'm not reading all of that. So far it looks really clean, but let's see. So you have the sequencer start new sequence, and the first thing I see is that you are using the type notations right here, the type checking, but you didn't use it in, let's say, this variable right there, instead of the sequence functions. And so that's a thing to note. So that's the start, cancel, and then get. So yeah, I'm not finding anything wrong yet with the script, but I need to say that something like this is really neat, where you do sequence functions from start and then current sequence that you get from the title, and then it just starts basically one of these functions right here. That's a really neat thing that you can do with module scripts. Okay, let's move to the main script. So you have your modules, you also use the promise, and if it comes to variables, in my opinion, I prefer having, let's say, this line right here, because usually tables are the thing that takes the most space in a code, so I prefer to have them at the bottom of the variables. I prefer to have the until under the repeat, so it would be formatted like this. And right here, if you are not in strict mode, you can also remove these two lines, because you don't need to assign nil to them right there. Then this would be a break. And let's have the next sequence function. Okay, and let's see how all of this basically works. Okay, and what's going on right here? So you have sequences from for that length, and then you set this length to the config from a config of a given game mode. And the game mode config is a data module that sets the round length. and you're saying that it would break when the order of sequence is changed, I can really see how I can improve this, because I don't know what affects the config order, and I also don't know what the voting script really is, neither the got_winner method. But let me move really quickly to the function right here, and in this for loop you don't use the index, so you can change it to a placeholder, and in sequences could be changed to in pairs sequences, and then this function skips whenever there is not enough players. And if it comes to promises, you first get the function that's supposed to be run from the sequence, then you print out that it has finished, you catch any errors, and then you wait. So this is a proper way of using the promises, and something like this is enough for a basic round system. And let's move back to the remove connection, and I'm guessing you mostly wanted me to focus on this line, same with the voting right here. So what I would personally do would be to have like a different function which would just check the state. Instead of using sequence from for, you would have a state variable right here and a function which would return the state and also change it depending on, let's say, which sequence or which point of the sequence the code was currently running in. So instead of doing sequences from for, you would just do sequences from getState, same with right here. And because, like I said, I don't know exactly how the code functions because I'm not seeing everything, in here this would allow you to basically just do a lot of different operations or checks that you need to do. So it would return a proper state even if the order of the sequence is changed. But other than that, this code is, I would say, really good. And I would personally just say that if I sought to push something like this on a production on GitHub, on a main branch, I probably just wouldn't have any problems with it. Like, you could even make this function, instead of it being right here, you could also just put it inside of the sequences functions, and then you could have a value right here, a variable that you could also affect from different scripts. It would be the state variable, which would be equal to just whatever, and right here you could also return the state or change the state from different scripts. And something like this just wouldn't look really nice, but it will get the job done. I'm not gonna lie, these code reviews are kind of just frying my brain at this point. Okay, now this code for a horror game, but let's move to it. Okay, first thing, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you could just have a table. I'm gonna name this one values, where you will just insert these lines right here while separating them. And instead of one, you could just have different indexes. You could just sort them like this, where this would be the index 1, this the index 2, this line would be 3, 4, and 5, right? I don't remember if the Lua tables sort anything in that order, if it stays the same or not, but even if, you could just do index 1 would be equal to this. Oh, it says that table index 1 is duplicate, previously defined as a list entry, so it should be fine, right? And instead of this one, instead of being chat equals to 5, you could do values from 5, like so. Then you override the variables right here, and again, having the services at the top is better. Then you would put these variables right here, like this, so it would be more readable. But you have papers, which you have to do wait for child. Then you have paper 1 and paper 2, and you just create a pack of them. You could shorten the code by just doing this, or even just have a loop. If you had, let's say, more papers, you would make a setup function or just do a for loop that you would fire immediately after the script run. Here you would do for index paper in pairs, then the replicated storage wait for child papers, which is only used in one place, so I can just put it right here. In pairs papers do, you would just have the paper pack, which would be an empty table at this point. Or you know what, I'm just gonna also do this just to show functional programming. You could have the paper table in the function right here, and then you would return the paper table after the function runs, and you would set the paper pack to be the setup like this. Then you would insert into the table, which is a paper table, the paper, like so. And then, well, excuse my childish behavior, but getRandomPP doesn't sound like a good function name. I would rather name this one getRandom from pack, like so. I can see that you are basically trying to use functional programming, but everything here can just be put into one function, into the spawn random paper, where instead of just having it like this, you can just do local random paper would be equal to this line of code, and then you will set the parents to be the papers folder inside of the workspace, which isn't declared. And a better alternative to this would be to do find first child papers. So now if you have a different papers variable instead of any other scope, it's not going to highlight and confuse you right here. Then you have the handle chat, which I'm guessing normally would have more logic to it. And again, this variable right here, which this shouldn't be like this. You have a replicated storage variable right here, so you don't need to use game replicated storage again. You can just do replicated storage and then wait for child advanced flashlight like this. And then it's only used inside of this function, so you can have it right there. And there is again game.workspace, but you already have the workspace variable that you have overwritten, so you can just set it to workspace.bt, but I don't really know what bt is, so it would be better if you had it like so, set bt workspace, wait for child bt, then here you will just do bt touched connect any function, and again I need these values, set them like so, and then just let me look like what's going on in here. So here you have game.players that's used twice. You could change it to player service, where you can get the players, then the get player from character, you need the character and the hit is a part that hit the character, so you need to do hit.parent. Then if it was an actual player and not a part, because other parts can also hit other parts, you need to check if it's a player, so you do if game player then, but here I can see that you're also getting the humanoid, so you can do local char is equal to hit.parent, and then do the game player to get the player from character char, so then I can just copy this, and do humanoid is equal to character find fish side of class humanoid. Then I can do if not humanoid, then return end. So you don't need this humanoid right here anymore. So first we check the cooldown, then you get the player GUI right here again. You already have the player here, so you don't need all of this. You can just do player.player GUI, since this is a player instance, and you check if the papers one is enabled, and then you also get the player GUI right here. So a different thing that you can do is declare the GUI right here, and then this one would be find fish child, the paper one. So if it's not on cooldown and GUI and it's enabled, then you get the chat service. So again, go to services, and instead of having all of these lines of code where you get the service, so having something like this is bad. What you can do instead is a for loop. So for index, then you repeat it 5 times for every value. So you do for index value in pairs values do. You have this wait one after every chat message, so that's the first thing you want to do, and then you can have chat service chat from the head, and then the value and the color, like so. But there is also an exception that you give the player a flashlight right here, and we can do if index is equal to 4, then we just want to spawn the flashlight in. And with this we just don't need anything here. Then you handle the chat from 5 again, which spawns a random paper, which right here, if this is a function that already gets the variable that's set, and it's only used in one place, you either don't need this function or just don't need to check the value right here. This handle chat, if you want to handle it through every message that is sent, you can just have it inside of this function instead. You would just give the index instead, or if you want the message, you could just set the value right here. So it's already a proper way of doing it right here. It will basically, if the message from value, which is from one of the strings right here, if let's say if the message was from this one, the last one, this is the index 5, so if this string is the same as values from 5, which it is, it's going to spawn a random paper. I'm getting my brain fried, brother. Okay, and the last one, bro, help me. Okay, I don't know how much relevant this line here is, but let me just see through this code first. Seriously, this is just very unreadable. You have these services right here, the event, GUI, a placeholder. So you have a max Q. This is a local variable, and the same with this debounce that I almost missed. You could have these right here at the top with other variables. Then you have the local info, which is set to twin info. That's only used inside of this function. Okay, I don't know why there is a task spawn here. It doesn't need to be there, because every time you receive a signal, it's already running in a different thread. It answered this in the video. What did it say? Is it even needed to index a function into a function? There is no way a function can be represented as any nil instance, right? Like, if you mean this is not indexing a function. This is telling what the function is returning. If you give it a number, let's say, that's going to mean that the function is gonna return a number. So if you had a local value set to 0, you can just return the value like this. If I go into strict mode, here you can see at the top, I don't know why it's right there, that the function is going to return a number. And it's giving this error because it's not returning anything. And if I do return 0, it's going to be gone. Okay, I'm gonna remove some of the comments because I'm having trouble reading them. Reading the code, I mean. Perhaps other methods without a loop, or maybe I'm just I'm gonna cry. Yeah, I can see that you are playing with me, like, what did you even send me? Bro, my head just hurts. I just don't even know what to think about this. I've been looking at the script for like 5 minutes and I don't even know what what it does. Okay, I'm gonna try to fix at least some things. So this is a local text. You don't need to do a toString text if you are declaring the text type right here. You're telling the function that it's a string anyway. So you can delete this line. Then you have if debounce, then you wait until there is no debounce. Then you have current q max q. And there is if not debounce, which you could first do this wait at the top right here. Then do the debounce, and this will allow you to just skip the if not debounce check right there. Then you can move the info right here. Then you clamp it on +1 from 0 to max q, which is set to math that huge. I'm getting trolled by my viewers, I swear. So you have the object, you set it to the clone function right here already waits for the descendants of the object to be cloned. But I remember that it doesn't wait for everything on the local scripts, inside of the local scripts. So sometimes having something like wait for child in UI, like this right here, or something like this is correct. Then use a task spawn function right here, change the transparency of the text, and then do if talker, which is another string value. Then you do a type right function, which I'm gonna check in a second. You create another twins. I already talked about twins in the video, so I don't need to mention it again. Then you change the current queue to clamp the current queue from -1 to math huge, just in case, trust me. Oh my god. Then you destroy the object, and then you just set debounce to false again right here. Okay, let me just move to the type right. Oh my god, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I have the object text, which is set right here. And guys, please use spaces after the comma to make the code more readable, because you can see what happens whenever you don't. But anyways, so you change the object text to talker again, although it was changed right here. If the talker already existed, and you are doing another check, bro, can I just, I don't know, stop? If I had the energy to do this, I would probably just rewrite the whole script, because I can. What is this? I don't think I'm gonna be allowing everyone to do a code review next time. But anyways, that's going to be everything for today. So thank you guys for watching, and see ya. And again, join my Discord server. And also, if you want to support me, you can do so through channel memberships.